Unaware men are to the patriarchy what demons are to the devil. That's why this comparison even comes to mind, because the parallels here are extremely accurate. And as always, everything that I'm about to say applies intersectionally. This applies with race, this applies with class, and the application that we'll be discussing today is gender. Let's start with the fact that both structures have something in common. They both operate upon destruction and hierarchy. Those two things are inextricably linked. You cannot have a hierarchy without threatening to destroy someone or something, or without somehow controlling resources in a destructive way until you are able to assume control and get to the top of the hierarchy. No other way. Destruction and hierarchy go hand in hand. In order to make everybody fit into this neat little structure, you're going to have to destroy some people, and most people will only ever exist at the very bottom of the structure. This is similar to hell in that the devil's the guy in charge. He's never not going to be in charge. And all of these little demons are just his minions. And the only thing they do is serve the devil and bring souls into hell. That's their only job. And when you think about it, it is the only job of men to serve the patriarchy and to contribute more genetic material to the patriarchy so that the patriarchy can continue to function. The human population is extremely important to the structure. That's why you'll hear a lot of billionaires freaking out about the low birth rates we're experiencing right now. That's because the system needs to be fed, and it needs to be fed people. Both of these structures need to be fed people. Now, the important thing to understand here is that these guys would not be serving an oppressive system for nothing, right? It's not just like inherently satisfactory to be destructive and chaotic and as a result of that lonely and unliked and not in community with each other. Because neither men nor demons are really known to have meaningful community with one another unless that community involves serving the structure. Places that men typically make lifelong friends are within these sorts of upward structures, like sports, the army, churches, things like that. This is where men make lifelong friends, but those lifelong friends, you're typically connected by serving and submitting to something that's bigger than you in hopes of getting recognized by the structure itself or by the person that you perceive to be at the top of that structure. You are not actually doing anything to help each other. You are actually just functioning as minions for the system, but together. The question is, why do any of this? This doesn't seem like it results in anything that we've come to think of as like intrinsically very rewarding. This isn't behavior that leads to growth. This isn't behavior that leads to healthy community. Like, this is all destructive behavior. So why do they do it? Because someone's been made an example out of, and they don't want to end up like that person. So in the patriarchy, it's women. Women form the base of the patriarchy. They are the only reason that it works, because they're the ones that have been subjugated to be the thing that men don't want to end up like. Which is why we have all these sayings of, you're a man, you're not a woman, don't be a girl, don't be a pussy, don't cry, don't do this, don't do that, because you don't want to end up like these guys. Because all they do is like stay home and pop out babies and clean and cook and do all this stuff that nobody really notices or thanks them for, that everybody takes for granted. They're also more easily exploited. They're more easily taken advantage of. You can trap them with a baby, unlike a man. Contrary to popular opinion, women are the only people in our society that you can trap with a baby, because they will end up actually carrying it in their body, and they will end up being its primary caretaker unless the man steps in and asks otherwise. So all of this default, labor, thankless labor, lies on women, and that's why men don't want to be like women, and they want to serve the patriarchy. Up at the very tippy top of the patriarchy is a man that they all want to be like. Just like all the demons want to be, Satan one day, and they worship him and do his bidding, because they don't want to end up like these poor souls that make hell so hot. Truth is, if they stopped bringing souls to the devil, there would be no more hell, and there would be no more oppression, and there would be no more fire, and no more any of that. Or if our society would just stop sacrificing women to the patriarchy, then there wouldn't be a patriarchy. There would be a natural order. Then nobody would be subdued and holding up a structure that other people are benefiting from. Even though it's hurting them too, but they're benefiting more than you. So whenever they think about, is this really a good system for me? All they have to do is look below it and look and just see like, oh, well, I don't want to be like that. Again, the intersectional parallels here are infinite, right? So this is for the middle class and the poor people, right? The middle class don't want to be like the poor people, so they keep serving capitalism, white supremacy, and for slavery, and for the mistreatment of other human beings. All people had to do was be like, well, I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be taken advantage of in that way. And this system allows me to avoid that. Serving the system allows me to bypass this treatment that I assume I would get otherwise. What happens, especially in the patriarchy, is that most men are going to end up squished into down here. And these are the men that typically benefit the most off of women's labor. These are the men that have lunches made for them by their wife, the men with the stay-at-home wives that just stay at home and take care of the kids, and it's such a privilege for them, and da-da-da, while the man goes to work and helps to make somebody else richer. So now remember, this is the largest portion of men. This is the lower class men that just rely on their wife for everything, so that their boss can rely on them for everything. Okay, so see how that works? The women are holding up the men are holding up who? Richer men that they want to be like. They're like your white collar people. This is your Wall Street and all that are just regular men's labor, which again is supported entirely by women doing most of the housework and child rearing and being kept out of this system, being kept out. until very recently. And in a lot of countries, they are still kept out. So we can't talk about this as if it's a problem that's been solved, okay? So the reason that the men down here really look up to this sector here is because this sector can choose whether or not they rely on women's labor. These men cannot choose. They have to rely on women's labor. The men that they look up to don't. The men that they look up to are rich enough to take a different woman out every night. They're rich enough to hire a maid and a cleaner. They're rich enough not have to rely on a woman, because women do a lot of unpaid labor. And when men hit a certain point, they can sort of outsource that labor. This is kind of a different echelon of men. These men still use women, but for different reasons. And they have access to a tier of women that don't have to hold up the system, that maybe have family money. They can sort of exist outside of the patriarchy. They are attractive to these men, not for the labor that they provide, but for the status that having such a woman can give them. So marrying a woman that comes from money, or marrying someone like very exceptionally beautiful. Basically, these men work. And when you think about it, it's the hardest work for the least reward. And everybody down here is getting very much exploited. When we move up one more level, these are the people that are taking advantage of these people's work, and they're creating money sort of out of thin air on speculations about the work that these people do. Like I said, this is Wall Street, money managers, this is bankers, this is the stocks guys, etc. Doctors, lawyers, things like that. They need working class people to pay them for services. So the working class is still the most fundamental and necessary part of this. So this all is an illusion that you need these people. These are middlemen, okay? And at the very top is the guy who gets to make the rules. Okay, now this isn't just one guy, but to most men, they have a different guy that makes the rules that's valuable to them, that they're looking up to. This person is interchangeable. For some men, this is like Donald Trump. For some men, this is Joe Rogan. For some men, this is Andrew Tate. For some men, this is Elon Musk. In a way, all of these men get to make some kind of rules that other men will look up to them and monkey see, monkey do, want to mimic them. And that's who all the men are looking up to. And this person is perceived as sort of both surrounded by and untouchable by women. They exist at the very top of the patriarchy, where they not only don't need women's skills, they also don't need women for status. This man sort of gets to operate outside of what a lot of men call the sexual marketplace, that they have to operate in. And these men are using the blood, sweat, and tears of these women to hopefully someday work themselves up to a position where they can either choose better women, or they can be sort of immune from having to deal with women whatsoever. But this only operates because it assumes women as not part of the system, but the thing that the system uses. So resources. So this system relies on women as resources, in the same way that hell relies on souls for resources. And these souls are collected by soulless creatures, soulless beings that cannot give the system what it needs to burn and to function, which is souls, but they can go out there and get them. You see the parallels? So men need to bring women in with them to the patriarchy so that women can help the patriarchy stand up, and also at the same time be excluded from competing in it, because it was never designed for them. Hell was never designed for souls to survive in. Only demons can survive in hell. Souls are what fuels it. Souls are what fuels the fire. Women are what fuels the patriarchy. Men are the only ones that get to benefit from it. And I've actually never seen this concept better illustrated than in Mad Max Fury Road. Immortan Joe would be the guy at the top that the men worship. This is very, very clear. He has his right and left hand men. He very much employs a servant class that gets to live a much better life than the masses. And he's really a symbol. He's really just a representative. If you take off the mask and the armor, he is just a disgusting, decrepit old man. But all the men worship him because he controls the resources. This is what happens when you get to the top of the patriarchy hierarchy. You end up with one person that controls the resources, that makes all the rules, and one person that the wealth trickles up to. The trickle-down theory is a myth. This structure was made and designed to function from the bottom up. Nothing ever trickles down. We already know this. If you live in America, you already know this. Wealth only goes up to the top, and the fruit of people's work goes to actually serve and enrich our ruling class. This is capitalism and patriarchy taken to its logical conclusion. That's what this movie is about. And tell me that these people are not actually living in hell. There's no water. One person controls all the resources. This is what the people look like. They have been deprived and stripped of access to their most basic necessities. And they are being told not to become addicted to water. They're being told that them asking for the bare minimum is too much. And this is all that they have to look up and look forward to. And they are supposed to accept their fate, just as the souls in hell are supposed to accept their fate and be destroyed to serve a higher purpose. Since patriarchy operates upon destruction and upon the extraction of resources, you also need people who are willing to go and do that for you. These are other people's resources that you're trying to take. And this has a lot of ties to white supremacy and to colonialism, classism, capitalism, all of it. As between the grunt workers and the middlemen, you also need to have a willing army. Okay, so now how do you get people to sign up into the army? If you're seeing this, that means I had to do a part 2. Sorry about that. Genuinely, I never mean to. Sometimes I just get into it and we just have too much material. So if you're seeing this, please go to my page and click on the part 2. See you there. Godspeed.